What the heck is going on with America's public lands? In the last couple of weeks, there have been mass firings of not only national park rangers, Forest Service personnel, researchers, scientists, firefighters, and many more across all sectors of the American government. And there have been multiple executive orders that are putting our public lands under threat. So in this video, I want to cover what is happening with our public lands. Now, the United States has about 2 billion acres of land, and the US government owns about 28% of that, which amounts to about 640 million acres. In order to understand the challenges facing our public lands, I think it's really important to understand how our public lands are managed and where the funds that manage these lands actually come from. Now, right now I'm actually in a national forest here in Colorado, and most of the lands that are owned by the federal government are in the western states. Actually, Idaho, Nevada, and Washington make up the most amount of public lands that the government owns, but then Colorado, California, Oregon, and New Mexico also have a lot of public land. And much of this land is open for resource development, logging, mining, and those kinds of things. We basically have 4 different agencies that manage our public lands. We have the BLM, or Bureau of Land Management, that manages over 200 million acres of land. We have the Forest Service, which manages over 100 million acres of land. Then we have Fish and Wildlife, managing about 95 million acres. And then we have the National Park Service, which manages about 80 million acres of land. And all of these different types of land are managed in different ways. They have different uses. For instance, national parks, as we know, are basically there to preserve wild lands. They're also open for recreation, but they have huge swaths that are wilderness, that don't have roads, and that are just left for the animals and the ecosystem to basically live without people kind of interrupting them. National monuments, on the other hand, which right now are being highly scrutinized to be maybe put up for sale in a lot of areas, are actually managed in a completely different way. They are managed by one of about 7 agencies. The Department of Defense can manage national monuments, BLM, National Park, National Forest. All of these different agencies can manage either separately or together national monuments. And a national monument, unlike a national park, basically just protects one item, either of cultural, historical, or natural significance. Places like Bears Ears, places like the Chiricoya National Monument. We also have places in almost every state that are not only important for maybe Native American history or cultural significance of other types, but these are places that are really important to people all over this country. And many of them also have very important resources that could be extracted from them, which is why some of them are managed by these multiple agencies. And that means there's also multiple pull about what they're going to do with these. And if it means that extracting uranium, for instance, like in New Mexico, is more intrinsically beneficial, or you could say that to the American people, than keeping this place just protected for its cultural significance, then you could make the argument that putting a uranium mine in Bears Ears, for instance, in Utah, might be more beneficial than just keeping it protected for people's enjoyment. On this same vein, national forests, BLM land, national monuments, are all of these multiple use areas. For instance, this national forest, you can hunt here, you can go fishing, you can go hiking, you can drive off-road vehicles in certain areas. And there's also potentially logging that's going on here. Now, up until the 1960s, our national forests in America were protected basically just for logging. They were said to be places protecting massive amounts of trees for the future or current benefit of the American people when it came to wood production, paper products, etc. But in the 1960s, there was this change in the human sentiment when it came to nature. And there was a very big blowback about whether or not national forests should only be used for logging or whether they should also just be used for recreation. So in 1960, a new act was passed which basically protected national forests for multiple use, which meant it wasn't going to be just for logging anymore. They also had to protect it for recreation, for hunting, for hiking, for fishing, for land and water usage, and not just logging. So there was this big change in the 1960s that basically forced forest rangers and national forest staff to not just be out there looking for, where the best trees were and to make sure that trees were growing, but to also make it available for people to be able to recreate in. One of the main things that the current administration, Donald Trump and, his team is wanting to do is kind of in a way just kind of roll back things to the way they were before this 1960s Multiple Use Act. They want to use our national lands for mineral exploitation, for logging, so that we have more and more of these resources available and don't have to import, say, wood, paper products, or oil, gas, coal from other countries. We do have the resources underneath these beautiful places that we like to explore, or maybe we do. The potential is there. And so their sentiment is, why should we pay somebody else for these things if we could develop them right here in our own country? The Trump administration's approach to managing our public lands has really raised a lot of red flags among environmentalists, conservationists, and local communities that also sit adjacent to any public lands as well. He signed an executive order in March that called for the rapid expansion in timber production among our national lands, basically trying to open up about 280 million acres to logging and timber harvesting, which is pretty crazy because that's 43% of federal owned lands, and that's way more than just our national forests. So now if we think about 280 million acres, that means they are going to have to open up also BLM land, national monument land, maybe even wilderness zones, places that never were meant to have logging happen in. And they're also trying to basically remove a lot of the environmental review that usually goes into the permitting process for logging and forest exploitation companies to be able to come in and get permits. National parks and national forests are funded in a couple of different ways, but most of that money actually comes from us, the American taxpayer, through Congress appropriation bills. Now, this is budgets that are set aside usually at the beginning of every year. And that money goes directly to the management and running of our national parks and our national forests. But a lot of the other money also comes from foundations like the National Park Foundation and the National Forest Foundation, which collects donations from all kinds of private entities and private people. And this money helps fund research, it helps fund conservation, and it helps fund the management of much of the land in the national forests and national parks. So as someone that pays taxes to protect our national forests, to open national parks, which is you and me both watching this video if you are an American citizen, I really don't think it's fair that the government is going to try to privatize these places that we have for years and years and years paid for out of our tax dollars. We should be able to decide how this land is protected. It shouldn't be sold to the highest bidder, and it shouldn't certainly be opened up to be exploited for resources that we technically don't even really need. So the Trump administration has now declared a state of emergency in our national forests, stating that there's wildfire risk, there is insect infestation and other disease infestation in our national forests, and that we should basically mass clear cut about 40% of the national forest land. And they have specifically called out many different areas of our national forest. I'm going to share the map on the screen right now, but much of this is the national forest in places like Idaho, Washington, Oregon, much of northern and eastern California, throughout the eastern Sierras, also even into some of our national forests that adjoins national parks like Sequoia in Kings Canyon, where we have Sequoia National Forest. There's also areas throughout Arizona, New Mexico, and much of the state that I'm in right now, Colorado, which also has a lot of national land. In declaring a state of emergency, they are basically able to skirt even more environmental reviews. So they'll be able to give people permits to go and log different areas with very little community involvement, with very little environmental review. And this could forever change the state of our forests. Now, stating that there's wildfire risk, that we need to cut down the trees, this is just not scientifically backed. You know, dozens and dozens of scientists have proven that there's really no correlation between clear cutting and preventing wildfires. Clear cutting actually sometimes makes wildfires worse because logging companies usually leave the stumps, they leave some of the debris. It also makes the temperature in these areas increase because there's less foliage and more ground showing, so the area is hotter. And fires, when they do go through these areas, usually burn hotter and for longer periods of time than fires that would exist in tree-filled forests. So saying this is to prevent wildfires is just a total farce. It's just a way to put money in corporate executives' pockets. There are 3 really important policies that normally not just prevent, but also kind of sometimes get in the way from logging. That's the Endangered Species Act, that's the Clean Water Act, and also the National Environmental Policy Act. All of these different acts are that red tape that the Trump administration wants to get rid of, because these are the things that make it so companies have to have an environmental review before they clear cut land, before they put in a mine, before they decide to, you know, strip an area of its resources or put in oil and gas wells, things of those nature. We've been talking a lot about logging in this video, but that's obviously not the only threat to our public lands. There's also the threat from uranium mining that may be happening in some of our national monuments, like Bears Ears, where there is a projected uranium mine that the government wants to have approved in that area. It's also happening near Chaco Canyon in New Mexico. And there's also the increase in oil and gas wells that the Trump administration wants to have in different areas across the country. And I'm not even including in this offshore oil and gas wells, which currently are being put back online or repaired so that they can hopefully be put back online in the coming future. Ones like the ones off the coast of Santa Barbara, which for over a decade have been closed because of horrendous oil spills that really devastated the Southern California coastline. No matter how you look at this, this is not a matter of who you voted for. This is a problem. This is a matter of protecting our country, protecting the lands that make this country beautiful, amazing, and diverse, protecting the ecosystems that provide for us recreation, food, clean air, clean water. If we cut down all the forests, if we mine all the land, if we build everywhere, we will not have a country to live in. We will not have clean air to breathe. We will not have clean water to breathe. We will all die of cancer or other horrible diseases if we get rid of the things that give us life. And I know this has been a little bit of doom and gloom, but we all need to be informed of what is happening. Otherwise, you can't do anything about what's happening. And if you don't have the information that you need, you're just left with either fake assumptions or just not enough information to actually go out and make a change or to inform your neighbors and friends about what is happening. If you watch this channel, I know that you enjoy our public lands, whether that's national parks, whether that's national forests or BLM land, whether you're a hunter or a camper or a hiker. Almost everyone in this country at some point in their life has enjoyed experiencing our public lands. And if the Trump administration succeeds in doing what they want to over these next 4 years, that may be inexplicably changed for the rest of our lives and potentially future generations too. So we have to stand up, we have to fight, we have to inform ourselves about what is happening right now and in the future. There are many different local organizations that you can either help by giving money to, or you can help by volunteering. If you live near a national park or a national forest land, volunteer for trail maintenance, volunteer for fire management, anything that you can do to participate in action around our national lands will be helpful. If you want to give money, the National Park Foundation is a fantastic foundation that helps protect our national parks. There are lots of other organizations as well that you can support that help with conservation. The Sierra Club is a great one that helps with litigation. Right now, one of our most powerful tools is suing the federal government for what they are doing. And environmental organizations largely do that. The NRDC, the Sierra Club, Defenders of Wildlife. So you can support those kinds of organizations as well. And also when you're going out into our national recreation areas, you just need to make sure you are leaving no trace, that you are following the rules, that you are preventing wildfires, you are keeping your campfires contained. And most of all, share this knowledge with others. Share this video with other people. Share the things that you've learned with others, neighbors, friends, anyone that will listen, anyone that you know that enjoys public lands. And also look things up. If you're not sure, if you want more information, go and look up this news. Go and look up what you can do in your local communities. I know this seems like a really terrible thing that doesn't have much hope, but that's what they want us to think. They want us to give up. So we cannot give up right now. If we want to protect nature, we have to go out and fight for it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please share this with a friend so that we can protect our national lands in this country and have recreation for many, many years to come.